Kia ora everyone and a very warm welcome to No Boundaries. I am Laura McGoldrick, excited to be talking cricket with you tonight here on Sky Sport. I have some wonderful guests alongside me. I have beaming in from Bangalore, Mike Hesson on game day at the IPL. G'day Hess, how are you?
Good, thank you Laura. Good to be here.
Good to have you with us. And joining us for the very first time on this show is Logan van Beek, who is just fresh off a game for New Zealand A, playing against Australia. He's also part of the Dutch team and he plays for Wellington. Some of the great catches on the boundaries I can recall from Super Smash. Logan van Beek, welcome.
Hello Laura, good to be here.
Nice to have you with us. Let's crack straight into what is happening. The big news that everyone has been talking about in the cricket circles, I guess, here in New Zealand is the devastating news for New Zealand hopes and dreams at this ODI World Cup later this year. Of course, that is the loss of Kane Williamson. Although they haven't confirmed he'll be out of the World Cup, it looks highly, highly unlikely. In terms of build-up for this World Cup, yes, I don't think it comes more terrifying than this if you are planning for a one-day World Cup to lose your best player and your captain.
Yeah, look, it's huge, Laura, isn't it? I mean, Kane's, he thrives under pressure. We know how well he performed at the previous World Cup. He held that innings together. It was a horror. It's just the glue, and he thrives under pressure. The amount of games that he got New Zealand to the point of winning, including his performance in the final. I mean, he's very, very hard to replace. His calmness under pressure as a leader has been exceptional over the last, however many years since he took over. And he basically wanted to prioritise white ball captaincy. So, Kane will be absolutely devastated, as will Gary and obviously the selectors, because he's a very hard man to replace.
He is an incredibly hard man to replace. And when you come up against a team like New Zealand and you're taking on Kane Williamson, Logan, I know you've played them at World Cups before and you bowl into Kane Williamson. That's a big thing. He's such a huge player. He's influential, as he said, he captained so well, but he holds the innings together. And there's a big hole there now for New Zealand.
It is, and it is obvious that missing Kane is going to take a big hit. If he is gone for the World Cup, what often happens sometimes in teams is when your main player goes, the rest of the team has to kind of level up. And so I'm actually quite optimistic with our chances going into the World Cup, because that means the likes of Conway, Latham, the rest have to step up. And, if we're going to do well in this World Cup and get to another final for the third time, it's important that those guys take the load and share it around and see if we can, do it again.
Yeah, some of us are still getting over 2019, so it'll be nice to have another World Cup to talk about for a change. But here's the big one is in terms of leadership. There are a lot of leaders within that one-day side, and the question is who will now lead this one-day World Cup campaign? Is it Tom Latham, who has been leading the side and has been really successful, but if we're honest, he's playing teams that we should be beating, and a majority of them at home? Or do you look to Tim Southee, the elder statesman in the side, who is already, Test captain and does so well, and also has that hint of, I don't know, I don't want to say a hint of Baz about him, but there's something that's a little perhaps edgier about the way he captains his side than perhaps a Tom Latham. Who would you go with?
Oh, I think also Tim's experience in India. I mean, obviously he knows all of the grounds incredibly well, having been part of the IPL many times. And although it's a different format, it's obviously seeing your side under pressure, how you respond when you're really under the pump. I mean, Tim's a head, and to be fair, Tom is too. I mean, Tom's done a very fine job, but if Tim's able to be a regular in that one-day 11, and that in itself will be a challenge with Trent Boult coming back and obviously Matt Henry having performed so well with the new ball. If there's being a guarantee in that 11 and obviously he's been bowling incredibly well, then I think he's the man to do the job. And that's just on the back of experience at all the different grounds. And he's a very, as I said, very calm head. And I think in an instance where you lose Kane at the last minute, with sort of 6 months to go to the World Cup, I think he's probably the man that I'd go with. But certainly that's no slight on Tom. I just think Tim is an exceptional leader.
I think so too, and we had Colin Munro on a couple of weeks ago who told us, he's a great leader of men, and I think in times of trials and tribulations like losing your captain 6 months out, that might be the guy to go to. To your mind, Logan, you've played a lot of cricket with Tom, against Tom, but also against him. You know what he's capable of, and he can keep a very cool, calm head. Who would you go to, do you think?
Yeah, I'd probably echo the words of Hess in the sense that with Lockie Ferguson, Trent Bolt if he's available again, Matt Henry's been bowling well. Southee, all four of them are not going to play in the top side, and then with Kane now gone, and probably more run scoring load is going to be put on to Tom. So I think it's a bit of a balance, a bit of a 50-50. I think time will tell in the sense of, if Tim is, the best, is definitely in the side. And I think for me, it's a bit of a 50-50 call. But I'd say the way that Southee's gone over the summer and, everyone's got behind him, he's probably the guy that's going to, be likely the choice. But I think Tom is one of those guys that is, performed under pressure since we've been in high school, and he's always calm under pressure, and you're guaranteed to know what you're going to get from Tom, and that's often in pressure situations. That's pretty key.
It is. And so we talk about Kane Williamson, the leader. What about Kane Williamson, the batter? What do we do with this batting lineup? Because there's not a great deal of, despite, you got Tom Latham, of course, but in terms of experience, it is hard to replace that experience and that knowledge of the game. What does Gary Stead do here? Is this the time that he turns to a more experienced player like Martin Guptill, who we've seen drop out of the side? Or is this Pakistan tour an opportunity to have a look at who they could replace just 6 months out? Hess, what do you think?
Look, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that World Cups do require experience, and I think Martin Guptill is one of those guys that has always turned up at World Cups, and he's always done a fine job. So I think he'll be very much in their thinking. And the ability for Conway to either stay at the top or bat at 3, depending on which other player stands up and says, look, I must be included. I don't think the World Cup's a time where you want too many new faces. I think you want to intersperse the talented, vibrant sort of youngsters amongst some real experience. And obviously with missing Kane, that diminishes that experience significantly. So that for me is where Martin Guptill comes back in the mix. He's obviously performed well in some T20 tournaments around the world recently, in particular the PSL. So it's not like he's in terrible touch or anything. But obviously, Gary and his team are looking at others in Pakistan during this white ball series. So Will Young is a player I think could also bat at 3, and depending on what they do with Conway at the top or in the middle, there's some flexibility there. But you don't want to forget about that experience. I think it's going to be critical come World Cup time.
Number 3 is a hugely crucial spot. We saw how much we needed Kane in that 2019 World Cup, Logan. So who would you replace Kane with now?
Yeah, I'm going to add another name to the mix, in Tom Blundell. He's a teammate of mine in Wellington. He's just come off being the best test player in the last 12 months. He, alongside with Young and Nichols, is probably the most accomplished batsman that we've got. So I think it's exciting going into this Pakistan series because it is a little bit of a shootout in terms of, because there's not many games left towards the World Cup. So I think, if one of these guys can step up at their Pakistan tour, then I think they're going to put their name well into getting on that plane to India. So I'd say, yeah, Blundell, Young, Nichols, and obviously Finn Allen, and Guppy is one of the greatest white ball players we've had in New Zealand. And so I feel like if he's not in the conversation, I think that would be a pity as well. So like he said, experience is key, and I think they're the guys that I would be looking at closely.
There's a lot of thinking that New Zealand cricket have got to do ahead of that World Cup just 6 months out. New Zealand versus Sri Lanka. We've just wrapped up that series here in New Zealand. That, of course, went to New Zealand. Sri Lanka showed some fight in the T20s, but just fell away in the one-dayers there. Hess, what do you think? How did you rate that New Zealand summer for New Zealand? Obviously, the Test game, we did an amazing job, given what was going on, I think, in that Test side. Just the games, how close we got. And there were some concerns, I think, just out from those Test series starting that perhaps, there was a bit of a change of the guard, really. There were some of the younger boys coming through. There's only a few elder statesmen left in that side with so much experience. But they came through, they delivered a fantastic Test series. But for the New Zealand summer, the New Zealand home summer, where does it rank for you?
Look, certainly the highlight was the Test match against England. That that was a significant shift, I think, from our test side after a tough start in the first test against England at the Mount. So that was an incredible match, and one that probably just gave that confidence to Tim Southee and the team that, hey, they still are on the right track. And even though there is a few changes amongst the staff in terms of from a playing perspective, they still play some good cricket and there's still plenty of depth. As I said, Tom Blundell, as Logan alluded to, was exceptional. Daryl Mitchell, stepped up. So a lot of these guys that have had limited opportunity are now becoming regulars and are grabbing it. So, our bowling attack's always been pretty sound. Neil Wagner still showed that there's a little bit of fight left in the dog yet, and that's always nice to see. A lot of people had sort of written them off, but with a man of that size of his heart, he's not going to give up without a fight. So for me, that was the highlight. Outside of that, a bit of a damp squib against England and against India and the white ball stuff. That was pretty disappointing early on in the season, because that would have given us a pretty good gauge as to where we were at, against a good side. And Sri Lanka were pretty disappointing from a white ball team perspective. T20, sure. And I guess the shorter the game, the better chance they've got. But in white ball cricket, they've certainly fallen off the radar a bit from a 50-over perspective. Being world champions, being World Cup finalists, and then having to qualify is probably a bit of a show of where they're at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. If they'd beaten us 3-0, they would have qualified for the World Cup. Couldn't quite get that job done. But Logan, for you, when you look at the home summer, how do you rate it for New Zealand?
I think it was solid. It was especially that back end with the England series. Those test matches were, gripping. Pretty much, we say this every year, but it revitalised test cricket again. But I think this summer, Matt Henry's been, someone who's been wanting an opportunity to lead the attack, and I think that was something that was a highlight for me. Well, personally, he's a very good friend of mine, but I've seen the ups and downs that he's gone through. But to lead the bowling attack this back end of the summer and the way they performed, I think that was awesome to see personally, but as well good for New Zealand. And I think it was a solid performance in this last series win. It got a little bit hairy towards the end of that last match, but I'm glad that we firmly bet Sri Lanka, as we should do.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens to them next, and if we see them in that World Cup, of course. New Zealand now head to Pakistan, where they have 5 T20s and 5 ODIs. Now, what do you think about that, Hess? How do you think New Zealand will fare? A relatively young side over there, obviously players missing through IPL for New Zealand, but Pakistan are at full strength. And I actually watched an interview with Guptill the other day talking about PSL, how they had an extraordinary amount of fast bowlers, and the stocks haven't looked this good in a while. There's a strong bowling line up there. The batters look good as well, and off something like the PSL, full of confidence. So that is a side to be aware of at home, don't you think?
Oh, very tough. It'll be a very tough series, even with a full strength side. So I think if New Zealand get there and get a win in either one of those series, I think that will be a fine performance. Fast bowlers, they've just got an absolute factory of them. They keep rolling them out. They keep, bowling with unconventional actions. So often it's quite hard to pick up. So it can even feel faster than it is. And from a spin bowling point of view, they've got a bit of variety there as well, which will always challenge that middle order of ours. So, look, if players go over there and perform well, then they certainly deserve further opportunity, because it will be tough. From a bowling point of view, the pitches are flat, they're very flat. So if you don't have airspeed, you've got to be able to do something different, whether it be knuckleballs, whether it be back of the hand, whatever it is. You have to be able to bring some variety, because you will not get assistance from the surface. They are flat, and they require you to do something special. So it'll be a good test, as I said, against a confident Pakistan team who's come off a PSL where, as I said, been incredibly high scoring. So it's going to be a tough series, but one I'm looking forward to seeing who rises to the top from a New Zealand perspective.
Logan, for you, who do you think will rise to the top, as he said, and what will be a tough series?
Yeah, Hess made a point about being quite unique, and there's one guy who's been picked in that side, and Ben Lister. I think from a left armer's point of view, he'd be the only one that swings the ball away from the right-hander, that genuinely swings the ball away from the right-hander. So I think if he can get a little bit of swing I think he's going to be a little bit awkward, very awkward for a lot of those batsmen who probably haven't faced a left armer that swings it away. They face Shaheen Afridi in the nets, but he predominantly swings it in or just pushes it across. So I think he's going to be a bit of a handful in particular. And then in terms of that fast bowling group with the Pakistanis, last year they played against us in Rotterdam, and just them warming up was intimidating, in itself. So going off the bat, again, we've just mentioned the opportunity for the guys with the bats, and they're going to get a fair test.
They absolutely will, and I look forward to that getting underway. We, of course, are showing that all on Sky Sport for you to watch. In terms of IPL, which is well and truly kicked off, Hesson, you're getting ready for your third matchup. How have you found the tournament so far?
Look, it's very even, Laura. I mean, all teams have lost at least one game heading in. Some have only played 2, some have played 3. So it's going to be a very even competition. The fact that last year it went to 10 teams, makes making the top 4, a lot more challenging than obviously it was when there were 8 teams. And with the home and away element to it now, it's a little bit different than it has been the last 3 seasons, with either being in Dubai or in Mumbai in a bubble. So, back to the way it used to be from that home and away, and you've got to make advantage of your home conditions. So, obviously, we're playing at home tonight again, so a big game for us against Lucknow, who are obviously playing pretty well. But we saw something pretty special last night with Rinku Singh. Needing 29 off the last over, 28 off 5 balls, and he had 5 sixes to win the game. It was just extraordinary, and sort of brought the tournament to light, really. You don't even think about those in your wildest dreams to hit 5 sixes, and the commentators had obviously already put the game to bed, an over or so before. So it was, it was an amazing thing. And I mean, Rinko Singh's a guy who's obviously worked pretty hard for his success. So, good for him, and obviously feel for Yash Dayal, who unfortunately met him in pretty tough conditions in Ahmedabad last night. But it's been a great tournament so far. Huge crowds, huge noise, and I expect that to only just ramp up even more.
Yeah, absolutely feel for that young bowler there. I heard that Tim Southee, who plays for KKR, the team that won, was seen over there talking to him, sort of putting his arm around him, which was cool from a Kiwi perspective to hear that it was a Kiwi over there saying, hey, mate, these things happen, but boy, oh boy, did it happen, that poor guy. But Logan, have you been watching much of the IPL? It's always a great tournament. It's one of those ones, I liken it to the big bash around Christmas time. You sit down, you have your cup of tea, and you watch a little bit of cricket at night. It's quite lovely, isn't it?
This year feels like it's ramped up a little bit. It's a lot of it, I reckon. Just seeing the crowds, seeing the atmosphere, seeing the production, everything around it, and having talked to Michael Bracewell, who's with Hesson at RCB, it's his first time, and he's just amazed about this competition is just an amazing thing, and every cricketer. And all the boys here, would love to be there and be a part of it. But it's just, I feel like this year it's kind of ramped up a little bit. And, some of the performances so far have been, amazing. And I'm enjoying seeing Kiwis getting a good show, putting on a good show there as well. So hopefully tonight, we get a couple of more performances, but the DRS thing is I'm finding quite interesting, where they can review the wides and the no balls. I know that's a bugbear of mine towards the end of the innings, where that's that conversation with the umpire saying whether that was wide or not. Yes, it potentially slows down the game a little bit, but I think it's something that, as a bowler, I've quite enjoyed.
What do you make of all that, Hess? Because there are a lot of new rules around this time. You don't have to pick your team till after the toss. You've got the DRS. How's it been for you from a coach's perspective? It's a bit on. Yeah,
there's a bit going on. There's no doubt about that. I mean, firstly, I guess the wides and no balls, the fact you can review it, is on the back of a couple of results last year where the game was potentially decided by a waist high no ball and some wides. So this, I guess, just removes that element from the game, that at the end of it, all you're doing is talking about, an umpiring decision that potentially everyone at home could see was incorrect. So it's an interesting element. It does slow the game down, no doubt, but to be fair, it's just an extension of entertainment, I suppose. It just brings a little bit more drama to it, which brings it to a crescendo at about midnight most nights over here. So That one's interesting. I don't mind it. The impact rules are strange. I mean, it kind of removes all the all-rounders from the game, especially the Indian all-rounders, because you're just playing specialists. So if you bat first, you name an extra batter, and it has to be Indian because you're only allowed 4 overseas in total. And from a bowling point of view, you have an extra bowler and then you bring the batter in at half-time, pretty much. So it's pretty simple in that respect. But as I said, personally, I think it just removes the capability of the all-rounder, which is such an exciting part of the game. So, yeah, let's see till the end of the season. But personally, I'm not a huge fan of it just yet.
All right, Hess, well, good luck tonight. So New Zealand A has been playing Australia A in Lincoln, playing with the Duke ball as Australia prepare for the Ashes, which, let's be honest, I don't think I've been as excited for an Ashes series ever. It's going to be huge. But what did you make of using the Duke ball there, Logan? What was it like? Do you prefer the Duke ball to the Kookaburra? How did it work in our conditions?
Yeah, it's the New Zealand first class season it's quite interesting because you got 4 games at the start of the season which are on very green wickets, and then you've got 4 games at the back end of the season which are on very flat wickets. And so the Duke ball is ideally used for a flatter wicket. The good thing about it this last 3 days, we've just finished day 3 today, is that it stays hard for the whole innings. The whole innings, there is a chance to swing, which is encouraging for a bowler, and the seam's a little bit more pronounced, so you can get a little bit more nip off the wicket as well. So if we're going to get some flatter wickets throughout the Plunket Shield season, then I would say yes to using the Duke ball. I think using the Duke ball this season, in particular the Basin, would be ridiculous because it just already does too much that part of the year. But no, it's been very competitive. There's been scores over 400, 350. Guys are scoring hundreds. Guys are getting 6 fizz, 5 fizz. It just makes for a good contest, and I've definitely enjoyed bowling with it.
Hess, you've long been an advocate for the Duke ball, haven't you?
Yeah, look, I actually like the idea of using both. I think early season you use the Kookaburra, and then later in the season you use the Dukes. I mean, the first class season is highly competitive, but it's also about preparing players to play international cricket. So the ability to use both, I don't see as being major. The only concern I'd see is if potentially New Zealand bowlers come back leading up to a test match and have to bowl with the wrong ball. I mean, that sort of takes away the home advantage. So, but generally post-Christmas, once your test side gets together, it's pretty much the same all the way through anyway. So I think test matches with the Kookaburra should continue. I think test matches in New Zealand the last 10 years have been exceptionally entertaining. So I don't see any reason to change that. But in terms of developing players, I really like the concept of using both balls.
So, Logan, what does the winter look like for you? You're hoping to qualify for the World Cup with the Dutch. What's the plans for you after this A series wraps up?
Yeah, the World Cup qualifiers in Zimbabwe in June. So, we've got Sri Lanka, West Indies, there's Ireland, Zimbabwe, Scotland, UAE, USA, and then I think 2 other teams as well. I can't quite call them off the top of my head now. And so, yeah, it'll be about a week or 2 in the Netherlands, and then we fly to South Africa for a couple of days, and then to Zimbabwe for about a 5-week qualifying tournament, which it's going to be tough because we don't have our full squad. Half the squad are in county teams in England, and they're going to be playing the Blast and 100 at that time. So that's going to make it a lot tougher for us to qualify. And Hess brought it up at the start where, when the Netherlands go up against bigger nations, we have a better chance in T20 because it just takes a good innings or a good one person to have a good bowling performance to change the game. Whereas the longer the game goes, the more world-class performers normally tend to perform over the longer period, and so it's going to be tough, especially against those bigger nations. But then it gives myself more opportunity to score runs and take wickets while those guys not there, and and then from there come back and prepare for Wellington.
Oh, very exciting. Lots to look forward to for you, Logan. All right, gentlemen, well, thank you so much for your thoughts and your time today. Here's best of luck for the next matchup and the rest of the IPL. Logan, to you and the A stuff, good luck. Thank you for your time. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks very much.
And thank you guys so much for joining us. Make sure you tune into all the IPL action on Sky, plus the Pakistan versus Black Cap series, which is coming up very soon. You have a great rest of your night. We'll see you soon.